Thank you. Hi, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. This is Orson Aguilar. I'm a principal with Unidos US. Unidos US is formerly or previously known as National Council of La Raza, is one of our nation's largest Latino advocacy organizations. We have offices throughout the country. I'm based in Washington, D.C. Our Sacramento office is led by Jose Carmona. And we're really excited to be talking about an important topic today, which happens to be the CalSavers program, and more specifically, retirement. Especially now, I think, we're definitely thinking about California is in our mind and in our hearts with fires and also the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on all our communities, in particular for us on our Latino communities. And we've been tracking the economic hardship that COVID-19 has had and have been fighting extremely hard to make sure that resources go to our families. All our families are undocumented families or mixed status families. And we see in the data that our communities are suffering extreme hardship, whether it's high unemployment, whether it's increased debt, maxing out credit cards, having trouble paying the rent or mortgage. Our communities are really suffering, and it's really up to all of us to really step up, because we know that our communities have been there for our country. Our essential workers have been feeding us, right? Not once have we run out of food. And so, we have to keep that in mind as we have this conversation. And retirement is just as important, right? We need to address wealth building, as we say, throughout the life cycle. Retirement is one of those very important things. And up until now, it's been one of those luxuries that a lot of working communities don't have. But thanks again to the leadership in California, we have this amazing program that we're going to talk about today called the CalSavers program. So with that, just wanted to do a round of introductions. I have folks on the panel introduce themselves, and just really want to thank, of course, the CalSavers team that's been doing just a great job of making sure that Californians, all Californians really know about this program. I want to thank Ideate Labs, and also want to thank the California Hispanic Chambers of Commerce for partnering with us to convey this important message. With that, let's just do some introductions.
Hello, my name is Irid Gomez. I'm with the California Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and I oversee the entrepreneurship program with the chambers.
Thank you, Adi.
Thank you, guys. My name is Jonathan Herrera. I'm the Outreach and Marketing Manager for the CalSavers program, and I'm really excited to get to talk to you guys today and share some information about our program.
Great. And with that, why don't you just jump in and let's start talking about the program.
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Unidos USA, Orson Aguilar, for partnering with the California Chamber of Commerce, and we're looking to work with you guys in California in the future. Thank you also to the Treasurer Office, Jonathan Hernandez. And today we're here to talk and ensure that all Californians have access to a workplace retirement saving plan. As Osorno mentioned before, there is a lot of our local business owners, employees who don't have access to any retirement funds. So this workshop will be great for you guys, so you guys can start getting information and being educating on what it's out there for you guys. It's sad to see that a lot of our family members don't have this opportunity. So this is a great program for you guys to start planning for your retirement plan. As you guys might know, there is about 3.5 million of Latinos workers that will gain access to this retirement plan saving through CalSavers program. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being here. And it is my pleasure to introduce Jonathan Hernandez from Treasurer Fiona Ma's office, who has been working truly up and down the state educating employees and employers. He will go in more details on the program, talking deadlines and overall opportunities. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, both of you, Orson and Edith, for that introduction. And thank you to the Unidos organization and to the California Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for giving us this opportunity to, speak with your members and the community to share this really important information. And thank you all for joining us today, who has joined us today as business owners. I'm sure that you have a great deal going on right now. And I want to assure you that we at CalSavers know that employers are facing unprecedented challenges right now, both with the pandemic and now with the fires. So we certainly appreciate you joining the webinar with everything that you have going on, and want you to know that CalSavers is committed to supporting employers through these uncertain times by offering extra support and flexibility. So thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon to learn about the program. My plan today is to give you a brief overview on the background of the program, go over some of the employer's responsibilities, and spend some time talking about how the program works. But just to echo some of the sentiments that Edith and Orson went over, one of the key problems of economic equality in the United States is that so many hardworking Americans and so many hardworking Latinos, folks in our community, retire with little or no financial savings other than Social Security, and therefore can't make their ends meet once they reach retirement age, if they can retire at all. And I think that in addition to that, the COVID-19 pandemic has really underscored how important it is for workers to have access to programs that promote their short and long-term financial stability. And CalSavers is designed for exactly that. So I hope that after this presentation, you'll come to see CalSavers as one of the tools that can help your employees work towards a more secure financial future. So let's start by taking a look at the problem that the legislature was trying to address when they passed the bill that created our program. What it really comes down to is that nearly half of Californians are on the trajectory to retire into economic hardship at or below 2 times the federal poverty level. And we think that a key driver of that fact is that there's 7.5 million Californians who are going to work every day, playing by the rules, but lack access to a workplace-based retirement savings program. And as Edith mentioned, close to half of that 7.5 million are folks in our community, Latinos who are working every day, trying to support our economy and our state. And we think that this lack of access is particularly important because the research shows that workers are 15 times more likely to be saving and be on a path towards retirement security if they have access to a payroll deduction savings vehicle at work. That number actually goes up to 20 times more likely if the program features automatic enrollment, which is something we're proud to say CalSavers does. But drilling down a little bit further and looking at how this problem affects our community in particular, when you look at who has retirement accounts, the data shows that they're prevalent among, white, college-educated, and middle-aged American families. So what this graph is really telling us is that younger Americans currently have less wealth than their parents did at a similar age. Only 22% of families headed by someone with a GED or less has access to a retirement account. And then, of course, we see the racial gaps in access to retirement savings plan. Only 1 in 3 non-white families in the U.S. nearing retirement had a retirement savings vehicle. And thank you to our friends at Unidos who did a really great study back in 2018 called Latinos Retirement Insecurity in the U.S. Gave us some really detailed information about our community. Latinos working in the private sector are 42% less likely to have a retirement plan. And older Latinos in particular, because we know that not only is there a racial wealth gap, but there is a gender one as well. Older Latinos also face poverty rates at 3 times higher than older white women, and 1 in 5 Latinos over the age of 65 live in poverty. But there's hope, because other research shows that when folks have access to workplace-based retirement savings vehicles, they tend to use them and they tend to save and get themselves on a path towards retirement security. So that's exactly what CalSavers is all about. Back in 2016, looking at this situation that exists of retirement access in California, the California legislature decided to do something about it. They passed a bill back in 2016. It was Senate Bill 1234, did a couple of really important things. Number one, it gave us the green light to create our program. So here we are. But number two, and this is probably a very important reason for you folks joining us today as small business owners, it did create a new requirement, a new mandate for small business owners. And that basically says that any business in the state that has at least 5 employees if you're not currently offering an employer-sponsored plan, then you need to register for CalSavers and facilitate your employees' access to this program. So what that means in real life is employers who have at least 5 employees and aren't currently offering a retirement plan have sort of 2 options. Number one, you can go out on the private market and find a qualified retirement plan. We have a list in our frequently asked questions on our website, the details of different plans that you can use. Or option number 2 is you facilitate CalSavers for your employees. The way we measure your employees is by looking at the average number of employees that you're reporting to EDD in any calendar year. And that's how we decided, what your deadline will be for your specific business. And we'll get into that in just a second. But really quick, I want to mention employee eligibility. Any of your employees that are receiving W-2 wages in your business, if they're 18 years or older and have a social security number or an ITIN, they're eligible to participate in this program and should be included in your business's employer roster. And we'll get into that in just a second too. But quick note, just want to say that CalSavers is not intended to replace or compete with employer-sponsored plans. As I mentioned, the goal of this legislation was to address this access gap that exists in the state. So if we see more 401ks and more pensions and more other types of qualified plans pop up in the marketplace, we'll see that as a win. We're not measuring our success by how many employers sign up for CalSavers and how many employees we have, but by addressing this access gap throughout the state. So going back to this new mandate and the deadlines that we have involved, we launched the program back in July of 2019. So it's important to note that since it's open, any business, any eligible business that fits that criteria that I just mentioned is welcome to join at any time. You don't have to wait for your deadline. But because it is a mandate, there are some deadlines that roll out over the next 3 years based on the size of your business. So the first deadline is actually coming up. We're less than 15 days now away from the first deadline. And that's for businesses with more than 100 employees. You'll need to, again, either register for CalSavers or find a plan from the private market and get that up and running. The next deadline is for businesses with more than 50 employees. You'll have until June 30th of 2021. And then the last deadline for businesses with 5 or more employees, you'll have until June 30th of 2022. But again, it's open for all eligible businesses. So if you happen to have 5 or more employees or 50 or more employees, you don't have to wait for your deadline. You can register at any time and help your employees start saving as soon as you're ready. Quick note for businesses with less than 5 employees, just in case we do have some of you on this webinar. Employers with less than 5 employees are not subject to the mandate. So unfortunately, you can't register and your employees can't participate in the automatic enrollment part, but we did open the program for individual participation. So employees of these small businesses, or if you happen to be self-employed, a contractor, a gig worker, you folks can go directly to our website, calsavers.com, and set up your own account whenever you'd like. Let's see, I mentioned our list of qualified plans that we have on our website. Here the list is for you to take a brief look at, but we won't spend too much time on this in the interest of time. Couple of other key features that I like to note at the beginning, just so you know what's going on with the program. Number one, as I mentioned, it does feature automatic enrollment for your employees, and we're going to go into this in much more detail in a moment. It is completely voluntary for your employees because they can opt out or opt back in at any time. But it is important to note that if they don't opt out within the first 30 days of you providing their information, they will get automatically enrolled. Number two, we're designing this program as a public-private partnership. It is professionally managed by private sector financial firms, but with state oversight. So you get the expertise of these professional financial firms that do this, as their business. But it's all overseen by a 9-member public board chaired by the state treasurer, the board for whom I work. And then, of course, we're building this all at zero cost to the state and the taxpayer and the employer. The program is going to be entirely self-sustaining based on the fees that we charge the participants, so it won't cost the employer or the taxpayer or the state anything. All right, so let's get into those employer responsibilities. If you as a business owner decide to participate in this program, what is it going to look like for you? But first, let's talk about what we had in mind in designing the program. So back in 2016, when the legislation passed, one of the very first things we did was get together a group of stakeholders that represented community groups, consumers, but also business owners, right? Small business owners, chambers of commerce, industry associations, different groups that represent the voice of small businesses, including the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, that was a longtime supporter of the program, even during the legislative phase. But what we wanted to know from employers in particular is, what is it about the plans on the private market that make it difficult for employers to sponsor this type of plan for their employees? And by and large, they would all sort of cite these same 3 hurdles that were preventing them from offering a plan. Number one is the administrative burden. It's a lot of work to do the research, to do the planning. There's ongoing requirements if you're sponsoring a 401k. Number 2 is the fees. Not only are there startup costs, but there's ongoing fees for maintaining your own plan, including hiring fiduciaries, paying for audits, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, there's the fiduciary liability. If an employer is sponsoring their own retirement plan, they're responsible for monitoring the fees and the investments, and if something goes wrong, they're potentially liable to their employees if something does go wrong. So that's what we had in mind when we created the program or designed the program, and we designed it to address all 3 of those things. So we tried to make it as easy as possible for employers to facilitate. As I mentioned before, there are no fees for the employer to facilitate this program for your employees. And of course, employers are not fiduciaries of this program, because employers are not sponsoring the program. So the fiduciary responsibility falls on the 9-member board that I work for and all of our relevant contractors. It's our responsibility to make sure that the program operates in the best interest of the savers, of your employees. So hopefully you'll see some evidence of that as we go through what facilitating the program actually looks like for employers. So let's talk about the employer responsibilities. And that starts, as I mentioned, with registering by your state required deadline and setting up your account. And this is, if you've ever set up any type of online account, it's that easy. You go to our website, you set up a username and password, you tell us a little bit about your business and about how you run your payroll. And then the next step, very important, is you submit a roster of your employees. Now, I mentioned all of your employees that are W-2'd, that are 18 years or older and have a social security number or an ITIN should be included in this. It doesn't matter if they're part-time, full-time, seasonal, if they're working on a visa, as long as they meet those qualifications, they should be included and they should get access to this program if they want to use it. And then the last responsibility for employers, of course, is submitting the employee contributions as part of your existing payroll process for each pay period. And those last 2 check marks are really the only 2 ongoing responsibilities for employers. Once you submit your initial roster, you'll need to maintain it. So that means, when you hire new employees, you add them to your list. When you have employees leave, you can mark them as inactive. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the remitting employee contributions, you'll do that for each pay period for those of your employees that decide to participate in the program. They don't opt out. Let's talk about a few things that employers will not do. Employers, again, will not incur any program fees. I'm going to keep hitting on this because I think it's really important. Employers don't have any fiduciary responsibility, and employers are not allowed to make an employer contribution. So unlike a 401k or something like that, the only money that's ever going to be in these accounts are your employees' own money. Employers aren't allowed to make a match, for example. Few things employers must not do. Employers should not be encouraging or discouraging participation in CalSavers. Employers shouldn't be providing advice about investment options or participation in the program. That's always a good rule of thumb. And employers don't manage investment options, don't process distributions, or manage any of the changes that employees have to make, like if they need to change their address or add a beneficiary, or if they decide to change their contribution rate. All of that is done directly with the program so that you as the employer don't have to take on that administrative responsibility. Again, that was part of the program design to make sure that it's as easy as possible for you as an employer to facilitate. All the communication is done through the program, and then we will let you know as an employer what changes you need to make for any given payroll. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the timeline for you as the employer. It all starts with you receiving an access code from the program. Many of you may have already received your access code. If not, you can always contact the program, and we'd be happy to look you up and find your access code. But once you have that, you can register. As I mentioned, you can register today or anytime before your state required deadline. And there's just 3 pieces of information that you need to do that. You'll need your EIN, your California payroll tax ID number that you get from EDD, and as I mentioned, that CalSavers access code. Once you register, and this is sort of important to note, once you register, you have 30 days to finish setting up your account and upload your employee roster. So that's important to note for those of you employers that are on that second or third wave. You're not required, as we said, to register until your deadline. But once you do register, the regulations do say that you need to start setting up your account, uploading your employee roster, and facilitating the program for your employees. But once we have your employee roster, the information that we need for your employees to set up their account, we do all of the communication with your employees. It's our responsibility to send them the welcome kit. We actually send them 3 messages during that 30-day program, so that they, we do our best to get a hold of them and let them know what's going on. But again, that was done to remove that responsibility from the employer. We didn't want employers to be in the position to have to hand out all these forms and collect all the opt-out forms. Again, the idea was make it as easy as possible for the employer. But after those 30 days, employees are enrolled in the program. And usually the first or second paycheck after that employee decision period is when you as the employer will initiate the payroll deduction and start sending contributions to the program for those of your employees that didn't opt out. One thing you guys can do as employers during that 30-day employee decision period, though, is contact your payroll company and get their help setting up a deduction on your account so that it's ready to go at the end of the period. But that's it. And then again, it'll be part of your ongoing payroll process to make these deductions for your participating employees and send that money to the program. All right. So let's now talk a little bit about what your employees get, right? What is the Savers perspective of this program? So let's talk about the program features. It's all built around an automatic payroll deduction IRA. So employee contributions are deducted directly from their paycheck and deposited into an IRA account that is in their name and they own at all times. Again, it's completely voluntary for Savers, so Savers can opt out or back in at any time. And our goal on the Saver side, just like on the employer side, our goal was always to create a very simple program. And it's so simple, in fact, that folks can get automatically enrolled and not do anything, and they still find themselves in a age-appropriate investment option. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Or for people who do want to engage with the program and customize their settings based on their own investment tastes. We do have a small menu of investment options that people can choose from that sort of run the spectrum between more conservative investments and more aggressive investments. But again, the idea was keep it simple. We don't want to overwhelm people with too many choices. Number 4, very key feature of the program is that it's completely portable. Unlike a traditional 401k or other employer-sponsored plan, CalSavers is not tied to the employer. So it's going to follow employees no matter where their career takes them or no matter where their life takes them. Chances are, if they end up leaving your job and going to another business down the street, chances are in a few years they might be a CalSavers participating employer as well. In which case they can start making contributions into their existing CalSavers account after their 30-day employee decision period. And this is also great for folks, who are working multiple jobs. They can contribute from multiple jobs into the same account through CalSavers. So very good. The portability is very good for a mobile workforce or a workforce that tends to work multiple jobs. All right, and then of course it's a very, very low cost program for Savers. As I mentioned, there are no fees for the employer, but and we are building this without using taxpayer money. But the program, there are some administrative investment costs that need to be covered. So those will be covered using a small fee that the Savers will pay. The legislation that created the program said that our fees had to be below 1% before by year 6 of operation, but we're really proud to say that at launch our fees were below 1%, depending on the investment options that your employees choose. As I mentioned, there are 5 of them. They will pay between 0.83% and 0.95% per year. So that means 83 cents to 95 cents for every $100 they have in the account per year. And then also built into the contract that we have with the system, with the program administrator, our fees will automatically go down as the program grows and the program reaches scale. So again, our goal is to keep a very, very low fee product for our savers. All right, so let's look at that timeline again, but let's look at it this time from the savers perspective. How did they get enrolled in the program? Well, again, it all starts with you as the employer uploading that roster of eligible employees into the CalSavers employer portal online. Once we have that information, as I mentioned, it's CalSavers' responsibility to communicate the program to your employees and to help them decide how they want to participate. But once we send that notification to the employees, that starts that 30-day employee decision period. After that 30-day employee decision period, the employee is enrolled in the program and you as the employer can begin initiating the payroll deductions. But during those 30 days, your employees need to make their decision. And there's 3 things that they can do. Number 1 is they can do nothing, in which case they'll get automatically enrolled with the standard default settings. And we'll talk about what those are in just a second. Number 2 is they contact the program either by phone or online, and they customize their account. And then option number 3, of course, is they can opt out. And we've even tried to make that process as easy as possible. They can do it by filling out the paper form that comes in their welcome packet. They can do it online, or they can call our 800 number, which is, of course, a multilingual service, and they can do it over the phone. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the standard settings, the default settings, and the ways that your employees could customize their account. The program, as I mentioned, is built around a payroll deduction IRA. We chose the Roth IRA as the default for the program. For those of you who aren't as familiar with the types of IRAs, the Roth IRA is the IRA that allows the employees to make contributions after they've already paid taxes on the money. And we think that that's important for a couple of reasons. Number 1, we think that the tax-free growth of the Roth IRA is really, really powerful. So they're paying taxes on it now, but all of the growth that they achieve in the investment over their career once they reach retirement age is tax-free. So if they deposited $10 when they were 25 and that $10 is now worth $40 or $50, they can pull all that money out without ever having to pay taxes on it. The other important reason is that because you're paying taxes on the contributions as they go in, employees are actually allowed to withdraw their contributions before they reach retirement age without paying taxes or penalties. And we thought that this was important for a couple of reasons. Number 1, for those employees that get automatically enrolled because they didn't see the notice or they didn't respond to it, 2 or 3 paychecks down the line, they look at their pay stub and they say, wait a minute, my check is short. If they decide they don't want to participate, they can call the program, they can opt out, and they can at least get their contributions back. Now, if they've earned some interest on those investments, if you try to withdraw earnings out of a Roth IRA, those are potentially taxed and penalized. There are some exceptions for that, but we figured at least people could get their contributions back if they don't want to participate. But number 2, it also works for folks in an emergency. Now, obviously, it's a retirement account. The goal is long-term savings. But, the reality is for the majority of folks that are going to be exposed to this program, it's their first time that they've ever had this type of account. And, looking at the research, it's mostly low to moderate income workers sort of make up the majority of the folks who are going to be in the program. So we wanted to make sure that people had access to their money in an emergency. If their car breaks down or they lose their apartment or something, they can make a withdrawal from their CalSavers account, if they have an emergency. And if we save them from having to go to, say, a payroll advance company or something like that, that's probably a win. So the Roth IRA is the default for the account type. Our contribution rate starts off at 5%, but it does feature automatic escalation. And what that means is we're going to raise participants' contribution rate by 1% per year until it reaches 8%, at which point it taps out. And then for the investment options, we decided to make it so that the first $1,000 that anybody contributes is going to go into a money market fund. Now that's a very low risk, very liquid style of investment. So it protects or does its best to protect the contributions that people make, and provides a little bit of liquidity. But then any contributions that are made after that first $1,000 go into a target retirement fund. Now, those are those mutual fund style investments that automatically adjust to become more conservative as the participant gets older. So when you're young, it's a little bit more weighted towards the stock, so it's a little bit more aggressive, knowing that they have time to ride out the market if it goes up and down. But it automatically adjusts every 5 years as the saver gets older, so that by the time they're closer to retirement age, it's more weighted heavily towards the stock or towards the bonds, and it's not taking as much risk, knowing that savers don't have time to be taking a lot of risk. All right, so let's talk about how savers can customize the account. It starts with being able to recharacterize to a traditional IRA. So there are some income limits on the Roth IRA. So there might be some people who make too much money to participate in the Roth. We wanted to make sure that they had an option to participate as well. So we did the traditional IRA. The other group that's going to benefit from that are folks that do want to take a tax deduction for the current year. The good news for you as an employer, though, is that it doesn't change the way you do the deductions. It'll always be the same for you, and we'll work with your employee to get them any paperwork that they need to take the deduction at the end of the year. Next, on the contribution rate, obviously complete flexibility for the employee. They can choose anything from 1% to 100% of their salary, subject to the IRS limits. I haven't met anybody yet who's doing 100%, but I would like to shake their hand if I ever meet them. But that is subject to the IRS limits. They say that the most a person can contribute during a year is $6,000, $7,000 if you're over 50 and eligible for catch-up contributions. And then, of course, in terms of that automatic escalation feature, people can turn that offer on at any time. So we'll send them a notice in mid-November, early December that says, hey, your contribution rate is going to automatically go up. Click here if you don't want to do that. And folks have the option to turn that off. And then as far as the investment options go, if you remember a couple of slides ago, I mentioned that our goal was to make this as easy as possible. And one of the things that, the folks in the field of behavioral economics have taught us is that, when it comes to investment choices, less is more. You don't want to give people too many options because they tend to get paralyzed with all of those options, right? So we've got 5 simple options that sort of, again, run the spectrum between conservative and aggressive. That starts with the money market fund and the target retirement date fund. And then we also have a core bond fund, a global equity fund. And for folks who want a more sustainable investment option, we did add the sustainable balance fund, where the underlying investments are sort of chosen based on whether they're environmentally responsible, socially responsible, or governed responsibly. We thought that it was important to have that option. All right, so let's go back and talk about the impact to the community again, and why this is such an important program. And it all comes down to financial security, right? So we wanted to share this sort of demonstration about how compound interest works in an investment account. And granted, it's completely hypothetical, right? There's no guarantee in an investment account, and the market will go up and down. So, there is potential that assets lose value, but the trend is, looking at the history of the stock market, that over the long term, it always achieves growth. So we created this scenario, with what we see as sort of our typical saver. So we gave them a starting salary of just $30,000, and all they did was follow the default settings. So they started at 5%, that went up 1% per year until it reached 8%. And then we figured on just a hypothetical 5% rate of return over their 40-year career. And you'll see that once they reach 65, once they reach the retirement age, they're sitting on a nest egg of close to $350,000. And I think what's coolest about this scenario is that only $119,000 of that is their own contribution. The rest of that is just the compound interest, growing over time in their account. Again, totally hypothetical situation, but we wanted to, really demonstrate the potential impact of this program. And that $350,000, that's life-changing for this particular worker who may have had to rely on Social Security alone when they reach retirement age. And just for comparison's sake, I created this second scenario here just to show what the difference is between saving in an investment account with a higher rate of return versus a bank account. with a much lower rate of return. In this case, it's the same earner with the same income contributing the same amount of money. You'll notice they still contributed about $119,000 of their own money. But because of the lower rate of interest and because of the fact that they had to pay taxes on their earnings as they go, there's a whole lot less interest there at the end. So just to compare the two scenarios, the lines start together pretty close together, but then they diverge over time just because of how much more powerful the investment tool is compared to the basic interest that you earn in the bank account. So really quickly before I turn over to your questions, because I've been seeing that number of questions in the Q&A box in the chat going up this whole time. I haven't been ignoring you. We'll get to those in just a second. Just want to share our resources and client services available. Obviously we've got our website that's available. It's got great resources for the employer and the saver. We've got dedicated customer service lines for both savers and employers. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific time, Monday through Friday. So available when you need them. This, of course, is a multilingual service. We've got, you can call us at any given time and have native English or Spanish speakers available. We also have access to a translation service. So if your employees have other language needs, we want it to be as accessible as possible. So we can help with that. And then, of course, we also offer one-on-one support. Through our contractor, the program administrator, we do have a field team of 8 individuals based throughout the state, whose job it is to provide one-on-one support for employers. They can guide you through the process. We've been doing a lot of activities on Zoom these days, like most folks, because we can't travel around like we used to, but they're still available for that. And we can even do presentations for your employees so that we can answer questions about how the program works. And that too is multilingual. We've got English, Spanish, and Chinese speakers on that team. So we're more than happy to assist in that regard. We also have a bilingual mobile app. We're the only state-sponsored retirement plan that has a mobile app. We're very proud to say, although that might be changing soon. So really quick, let me look at the time. Oh, we've got plenty of time. Nice. So just 6 key things to remember as we recap this before we get into the questions and answers. Number 1, no employer fees, no employer fiduciary responsibility. Number 2, employers play a limited role facilitating. We've designed it to be as easy as possible and take as little as possible of your time. Employers are required to register by your state required deadline. It is a mandate, for better or for worse. I know we don't like the M word, but it is. Let's see, your savers are automatically enrolled in the program unless they opt out, because it is completely voluntary and offers flexible choices for them. And then, of course, we're very, very excited about the potential benefit, not only for the state, but, for our community in particular, to gain access to this type of program, given the disparities that existed in our ability to save for our families and for our retirement. So thank you very much. I hope you found this information interesting. I will leave this up for a while. It's got my contact information and it's got our website, all of our socials. This is a great way to keep track of us. But I think, one of the other key takeaways that I just want to mention in closing is that, a lot of people think we're crazy for launching a program like this, given the environment, everything that's happening with the pandemic and the economy. But as I said at the beginning, we really think that what's going on right now underscores the need for this type of program. And again, we really hope that people see this as a tool to help, individuals and families recover financially, in the post-virus period. So thank you very much. I see my co-presenters have turned their cameras on, so I'll see if they have any comments, and then we'll turn to the questions.
Thank you, Jonathan, for providing that information. I think it's a good time to just jump right in. There's some good questions in the chat there, and so feel free to kind of take them as you will.
Yeah, folks.
Perfect.
Here, just let you know, if you open the Q&A, there's a good amount of questions. I think we're at 11 and it's still rolling there. Jonathan, if you want to start at the top there from Nicholas Gutierrez.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you all for putting these questions in. I'll stick around as long as I need to make sure we get through the end. But let's see, the first question here is, can you explain the auto enroll will all of those not wanting this have to apply to not be enrolled? So yes. So, you know, we stand by the fact that it is completely optional, because folks do have the ability to opt out if they don't want to participate. But, you know, going back to the, you know, what the research in the behavioral economics field has told us is that, you know, people know they need to be saving, right? People know that it's the right thing to do, but it's scary, right? Because it feels like a sacrifice, or it's confusing because you don't really know, you know, how these programs work or where to start. So, you know, the research shows that all the people need is a little nudge to get them on the right path. And if you make it easy and get them going, they'll stick with it. Because again, knowing that it's the right thing to do, they'll continue with it. So that's sort of the idea behind the automatic enrollment. And, you know, again, the research shows that if people are enrolled at work and they can save easily through their paycheck, that's the way to get them going. So as far as those folks who don't want it, yes, it is their responsibility to opt out before the 30 days, or they will get automatically enrolled. But as I mentioned, we did choose the Roth IRA as the default for that important reason, that it does give those folks who are automatically enrolled the opportunity to get out, you know, if they chose not to. All right, next question. If a winery has a 401k with the union, does that satisfy for all employees? So that's a great question, because a lot of 401ks or, you know, other types of employer-sponsored plans don't necessarily have to cover all employees. Unfortunately, you know, the state law that created our program says that if an employer is sponsoring any qualified retirement plan, they are exempt. And we don't look into, you know, whether or not they cover all folks. So unfortunately, you know, for those employees that are working for a business that for some reason is not covering them in their retirement plan, you know, CalSavers unfortunately won't be available to that employer for them to be automatically enrolled, but they could always go to our website and join individually if they chose to. All right, let's see, next question. Please confirm the method to count employees. That's another great question. So we're looking at the average number of W-2'd employees that your business reports on the DE9C to EDD. So every quarter you fill out that report. We're looking at each of those reports and averaging out, you know, the 4 quarters for the year. So whatever your average number of W-2'd employees you had for, say, 2019 is what would decide, you know, whether or not you're under this first deadline for this one. Let's see, are independent financial professionals able to present this program to clients? That's sort of a tricky question. So we're not using a model similar to Covered California, where the state partnered with, you know, independent brokers to offer the health insurance to their clients. We're doing a direct service model, right? So we work directly with the employers to enroll their employees. However, I think that financial professionals play an important educational role. So if you have clients, you know, who come to you with questions about what they should be doing and stuff like that, I think financial professionals can play an important role, you know, helping people understand how important this is. The other great benefit for financial professionals is that this is going to create, you know, a new group of folks who are previously underserved, who now have, you know, access to a savings vehicle and are going to need additional help, you know, as they plan their financial futures. Let's see, next question. What happens if I leave California? As I mentioned before, the CalSavers program is completely portable. So that'll follow you wherever you go. And you'd have a few options, you know, once you left California and weren't working for a CalSavers participating employer. Of course, you can just keep it and let it grow on the side. You can continue to contribute to it if you want to, but you don't have to. It'll just sit there and grow like any other account. Or you could roll it over into another employer-sponsored plan, or you can roll it over into another IRA with an institution that you choose. So, but that money belongs to you, and it would be your choice what to do with it when you leave. Okay, can we also explain the individual enrollment if a company is below 5 employees? Yeah, super simple. Your employees can just go to the website, calsavers.com. and sign up. It's very similar to signing up for any other financial account. So we'll need some basic information: name, address, social security number, date of birth. And then let's see, they'll have a few different ways that they can do their contributions. They can link their bank account, they can send us a check, or they can actually work with their employer. If you, say, had the ability to split a direct deposit or something like that, then you could help them make contributions directly from the payroll. But that was a great question also. Okay, let's see. What are the contribution limits, and are contributions tax deferred, or does the program act like a Roth? That's another great question. So the program is an IRA, so it's subject to the IRS contribution limits for an IRA. So that's $6,000 per year for most individuals. But if you're over 50, you get an extra $1,000 per year. So $7,000 if you're over 50. And then it is a Roth IRA by default. So contributions are post-tax, but all of your investment growth is not taxable once you reach retirement age. But, you know, like I said, for those folks who either don't qualify for a Roth or who would rather take a tax deduction for the current year, we do have that traditional option available for those folks if they so choose. Next question. What about for the self-employed? How can they have a saving and retirement account with CalSavers? So this goes back to that individual enrollment piece. So go to calsavers.com, check out the website. Hopefully we'll answer, it will answer all the questions that you might have. You can also call our customer service lines if you have any additional questions, but you can sign up online right there at calsavers.com and start saving as soon as you're ready. Okay, let's see. It was mentioned that employees who work in businesses with less than 5 employees can still be enrolled. So that's similar to the previous question. So again, they can't be enrolled through their employer, but they can go to calsavers.com and start their own account. Let's see, is the employer able to participate? If so, is he or she impacted by income limits inherent to Roth or traditional? That's another great question. So yes, employers are able to participate. So if they're receiving a regular paycheck and they're W-2'd like the rest of their employees, then they should actually be including themselves in their roster of employees. If not, they can always sign up through that individual process. And then, to the second part of the question, yes, they have the same income limits. So, if they are a high income earner and they are over the income limit for the Roth IRA, they'll want to look into recharacterizing to a traditional so that they can participate without any issues with the IRS. Let's see, if employees get automatically enrolled, how much would the contribution to the plan be? And is there a minimum, and is it based on their income? So if an employee gets automatically enrolled, the default contribution is 5% of their gross pay. And that does feature automatic escalation, which I talked about before. So that means their contribution rate is going to go up 1% every year until it reaches 8%. Again, because that research in the behavioral economics says get people on the path, give them a little bit of nudges, as they go. But that's the best way. So we start them off at 5%, which is relatively easy for most people, to handle, and then bump it up just 1%. Probably not enough for them to notice every year, and get them on an even stronger path towards retirement security. I don't remember if there was a second part to that question, but I think I covered it. All right, let's see. Next question. Do I know the fees for the mutual funds that we use? Yeah, so there's 5 options. There's our money market account, there's our suite of target date funds, the bond fund, the global equity fund, and the socially governance fund. And the fees range, depending on which one they choose, from 0.83% to 0.95% per year. So what that translates to is basically 83 cents to 95 cents, again, depending on which one they choose, for every $100 that they have on their account per year. And then again, one of the things that we're sort of excited about when it comes to the fees, if you can be excited about fees, is that built into the contract that we have with the program administrator, those fees automatically go down as the program grows. So once we reach scale, we'll probably be one of the most competitive IRAs on the market. Does CalSavers have job openings? I like that. I hope that means I'm doing a good job. Right now, unfortunately, we don't, because our beautiful state, with its budget issues that it's trying to contend with, has put a hiring freeze on us state employees. So not at the moment, but please do keep an eye out. You never know. Thank you for that question. Let's see. Can we tell us who is managing the IRA accounts? Who are the partners managing the funds? Yeah, that's another great question. Of course, we can name them. They were selected, using the state's competitive bid process. So all of that's part of the public record. The program administrator, so this is the company that runs all the day-to-day operations. They, handle the contributions, all of the record keeping, call center, the website. That's a company called Census Government Savings. They're actually, one of the top 20 IRA administrators in the country, which is one of the reasons why we chose them, because they have the experience to handle a program of this size. And then the 2 investment managers that we have going on, 4 out of our 5 investment options are managed by State Street Global Advisors. So again, very reputable firm with experience. And then the 5th investment option, which is the Sustainable Balance Fund, that one is managed by Newton Investments, which is out of BNY Mellon. So again, you get, that expertise of these professional financial firms, but with state oversight. What are the income levels? I knew someone was going to catch me with that question. After all this talk about qualifying for the retirement or qualifying for the Roth. So I want to say that it's 120,000. You start phasing out of your eligibility for a Roth IRA. Let me look into that, and I will, if we've got some time after this, I'll try to plug it into the Q&A box. But I'll have to Google it just to make sure that I don't misquote it. But thank you for that question. That's a good one. Let's see. If I open an account as an individual, can I directly put $6,000 in one, or do you have to split it up over $500 per month? That's another great question. Yeah, you can do it. You can do it all at once. If you wanted to make one lump deposit for $6,000, you're more than welcome to do that. And as long as you do it before the end of the tax year, then it qualifies for that tax year. Let's see, next question. If the employee is 65 to 67 years of age, can they do a rollover to another plan? Absolutely, yes. Like I said, these accounts belong to that individual at all times. So they can actually do a rollover into another IRA or another qualified account at any time. I'd always recommend, though, that they check with a financial advisor to make sure that it makes sense for them. Let's see. Does a 403B satisfy the state requirements for a nonprofit? Absolutely, it does. Yes. So if you're running a nonprofit and you have a 403B, then your business is exempt from the mandate. So another great question. Let's see. And yes, absolutely. Can folks reach out to me in the future with additional questions? Absolutely. So my email address is here. Please do feel free to reach out anytime. More than happy to engage with you guys and answer any questions. Let's see.
This is Alex. We had a few people who were putting some of their questions in the chat here. I think you answered most of them, or most of them put their questions in the Q&A, but I do have one from Carlos here. Can an employee, individual, or gig worker open an account and fund themselves? I believe you already answered that one, but just want to reiterate.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, CalSavers.com. Set up the account, fund your own retirement. We're ready when you are.
Perfect. I think that was the only one that was missing. So that Edith, if you want to thank some folks.
So I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Orsano Aguilar, for joining us. He's from Unidos USA, and also Jonathan Hernandez from Treasurer Office. Thank you. We are actually having this webinar tomorrow, September 16 at 1 p.m. in Spanish. I already put the information, the link in the chat room, and we're going to be sending that to via email. So if you guys want to join us one more time tomorrow, you have more questions, go ahead and join us tomorrow. And please share this with other information. As we mentioned before, there is a lot of education that needs to be done. A lot of people don't have any idea about this program. I got a few phone calls asking about this program, what it was going to be, the benefit of it. So there's great benefits for our business owners, employees. They need to have a retirement plan, and I think this is a great program for that. And thank you one more time, Jonathan and Orson. Alex, he's saying that there's one more question.
Yes, Jonathan, if you look in there. Oh, they just took it off.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I wasn't sure if I was going to get a chance to answer it live, so I typed in the answer. But the question was, is there a waiting period for new employees? The answer is no. Employees are eligible as soon as they're hired. And in fact, the regulations do say that employers are required to add their new employees into the program within 30 days of their hire. So that takes care of that one. Yeah, let's see, the one more, let's see, you mentioned CalSavers has about a 1% fee. Also mentioned the other management companies that are involved, what are their fees? So that fee of less than 1% is actually all inclusive. That includes the administrative fee, that includes the investment management fee. So that is all your employees or any saver would ever pay.
Well, with no other questions, I want to say thank you one more time. I don't know, Orson, do you want to say something? Jonathan, thank you. Thank you for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much. And hopefully you all can join us tomorrow or let others know. Tomorrow we will have a similar webinar in Spanish. So please join us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, the great presentation.
Yeah, thank you both. And thank you to everyone who joined.
Bye.
Adios.